Yeah,
they know I
this is a scary one. This one might get us to sound. This is our first time ever recording together.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel?
I don't know yet.
Hey everybody! Welcome back to Questions. This is a show, I guess,
Sure.
This is a thing that we do. Basically, you have questions about life, philosophy, theology, faith, spirituality. You have questions, and we try to answer to the best of our ability, probably pretty unsatisfactory.
Yeah, not well.
And so it's part of the community that we started called the Co-Mutual, which you can join and follow along with on Instagram at the Co-Mutual. Or you can watch on my YouTube page at Brennan Johnson. You can always be asking questions on Instagram, DM, comment, message here on YouTube, whatever works for you. We're always taking questions and we're always giving answers. So you might have noticed there's another person with me. This is Justine. This is my wife. You know, the person I always say is going to come on at some point to give her thoughts on some of these questions. She finally agreed. So.
And I was wearing makeup.
Yeah.
When Brennan wanted to record. So I felt okay with it.
Yeah. If you only watch questions, you don't watch anything else on the YouTube channel, you might be wondering why I'm not in my very book-heavy laden office. And that is because, one, I don't work in that office anymore. And two, we just moved. So what you get is a white wall with a door that is 100 years old and won't...
It doesn't latch.
Fully close. So let's dive into the question for today. So the question for today is, what is your view on socialism, social justice, and Black Lives Matter? Justine, why don't you start us off?
I am passionate about all three of those things. So BLM, Black Lives Matter, it's probably the most important movement that has come out of our generation. It's really important. It is, I would say, vital to society and vital to survival for Black people, truly. And I know it gets a lot of controversy because it sounds like only Black Lives Matter. And I think that is not what it's saying at all. Of course, every life matters. Every single life matters. But Black lives are the ones that are ending too soon, that are being endangered. Bad things are happening to Black people for no reason, to innocent Black people. If you look at police killings, if you look at crime, if you look at every statistic you can find, it negatively affects Black people. And that is the crutch of that movement, is Black lives matter too. Everyone's lives matter, but right now we need to focus on how quickly, Black people are dying. Tragically, Black people are dying. I could spend too long naming names of Black people who have had their lives ended tragically, horrifically, and unjustly. I think Black Lives Matter as a movement is vital to our society and to our nation. And I know that's kind of a hot take for some people, and I don't care. I'm not one to sugarcoat things or to hide my opinions. I think Black Lives Matter is vital and important. It is a movement that was started, and it's tragic that it had to start, but it's important, and it is central to our society at this point. It has to be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you've said. As a movement, the work that's being done, is so important, so vital.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do want to add one thing. Black Lives Matter as the formal nonprofit organization, I don't have an opinion on because I don't know much about them, and that's on me. So I just wanted to put that caveat in there.
Yeah.
But I don't have an opinion on the nonprofit. I don't know much about it, and I will fix that.
I think it's an important distinction to separate the movement from the organization. If you are against Black Lives Matter, the movement, you're choosing to be racist. Whether you even realize it or not, you are deciding that Black lives don't matter.
In whatever capacity that means.
But when you start talking about the formal organization, I'm with Justine in that I have not done a lot of research I don't know a lot about them. You go into a specific cultural circle or faith-based circle or belief circle, and people are going to have wildly different views. In this day and age, it's impossible not to be an organization or not to be a person and not have some group out there going, well, you are evil, and here's reasons why you are evil. And if you don't know better, you will believe they are evil.
It's the beauty and the tragedy of religious freedom.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the beauty and the tragedy of just the internet. If you are on a specific circle and you see an article that says Black Lives Matter has stolen the money donated to them, oh, well, then the worst thing ever. But then there's people who are going like, oh no, they didn't actually steal. You know, that's the whole thing. It's like as an organization, it's a lot trickier.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not my place to judge if they're good or bad.
Organizations exist that do good things that I don't like.
Yeah, crappy organizations do good things, and good organizations do crappy things, because that's
American Red Cross.
Human. And so that's why, as a movement, as an idea, as a principle, Black Lives Matter is great and important, and vastly important. When you try to do something as a person, it's always going to come up a little less than perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So that's my view on Black Lives Matter. As long as their main goal is to make sure that people know and people are aware and people are learning how to make this world a better place, then I am okay. So, socialism.
Socialism is tricky because half of the United States has an idea of what they think socialism is, and the other half has an idea of what they think socialism is. And neither side really nails it on the head. As with anything political in this country, when it comes to Democrats and Republicans, in 2016, I caucused for Bernie Sanders. In 2020, I prayed and prayed that Bernie Sanders would be our president.
We feel the burn in this household.
And, you know, when AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was coming into popularity and being elected and then everything, that's when I started learning about democratic socialism. And learning about it and hearing her policies and hearing her ideas, I'm going, yeah, that seems like a thing this country should do. Like socialized education, socialized healthcare, socialized public transportation, like all of it. Those things make sense to me in my brain. And I know, as my father likes to call me, his precious little liberal, which is hilarious to me. Because he says it lovingly. My dad loves me despite my political opinions. So when AOC was like coming into popularity and running for her office and just being everywhere because she was so radical, I began just thinking like, oh, duh, this makes perfect sense to me, and this is something that I subscribe to very wholeheartedly. And then thinking about my time in Sweden when I was in college and just them complaining about all the socialized things. Like they have socialized healthcare and socialized education, and hearing evangelical Christians complain about stuff in Sweden, except that Sweden made it illegal to be homeless, meaning they provide their citizens and their residents with all of the resources. The livable wage, I don't even know what it is at this point, but I know it's a lot more than an equivalent of like $20 an hour. They pay you to go to college. Their housing is actually affordable. They've socialized everything. And hearing evangelical Christians complain about that and complain about socialism, but then be like, oh, but it's so great that it's illegal to be homeless. Like that's because of all of the socialized programs that they've installed. So I am pro socialism. Much to many of my relatives' disdain.
Yeah, I have no problems with socialism. The funny thing to me, there's a part of me that would like to say I have no problems with people who have any sort of beliefs, political beliefs. One should be able to believe what they want, but then I have to edit that by saying though, like, oh, but like if you believe something that hurts people, then I'm not okay with that, and that is the point where I will argue with you because what you believe is actively hurting people, and far right and alt right people whose views are actively like, if you die.
Are your socks Jonah and the Whale?
This sock is Jonah and the Whale. And these socks are pizza and beer. Actually, I think this is just. Oh no, here's pizza. Yeah, at the top. I'm a complicated man. And so that's what something I find so humorous is that the argument on the left is you are actively seeking to take away rights of people. You are actively seeking to make it harder to make it in the world. You are actively seeking choices that are causing deaths and struggle. And on the flip side, the main argument against socialism is it's my money, I worked for it, why should you take it? So that's my thing is I support things, I support ideas, I support movements that are actively trying to help people. And when I look at all of the political parties, they all have hurt people and they all have the potential to hurt people. So I never am going to give any political party. But if the active arc, if the purpose, if the thing you are seeking to do is help, then I'm more for you and I'll just criticize you when you mess up. But I'm not going to be actively against you. So I have no problem with socialism. I have no problem with communism. I have actively voted for socialists in socialist parties for political positions. Sorry, mom and dad. I don't subscribe fully to any political party just because I know they're not perfect.
We like socialism. We think it's good. We think it's helpful.
Yeah. Is it perfect?
No. Nothing is.
So, social justice.
I don't know how to answer that because there's not a way that I feel about social justice. It's biblical. It's part of who I am. It's part of my community. It's part of everything I do. It's vital. Again, it's like the phrase Black Lives Matter. It's the most important thing we have in our society because without social justice, people die, people suffer, people go hungry.
If you feel negatively about social justice,
I don't want to be around you.
Yeah, well, again, it's kind of like someone who is against Black Lives Matter. If you're against Black Lives Matter, that means you're taking the side of Black Lives Don't Matter. So if you are actively against social justice, you are actively choosing to say
you're choosing literally injustice.
Injustice. And so, I mean, I think the problem is that there's a large chunk of people who say they are against social justice simply because the people who use the word social justice the most are people they don't like. I think there is a whole section of conservative Christians who do social justice. They do actively try and make some areas in the world better, but they don't call it social justice. And if you were to speak to them about social justice, they would call it a liberal snowflake, or whatever the crappy hip hot words they like to use. You can go on the internet and find some speaker or pastor or someone going on a tirade against this idea of social justice. And one of the main focal points of their argument would be you can't find the word social justice in the Bible, which is technically true because the first time social justice was used was in the 1800s, I think, by a Germanic community in America. Call the word whatever you want to call the word, but if you look at the Bible, justice is pretty in it.
It's very everywhere.
It's a lot of justice, both actions that are just and people talking about the concept of justice. And then if you want to couple that, there's a lot of societal things in the scripture that happens. You can't escape society when you read the Bible. So that means by default, there is social justice.
The idea was there.
The idea was there. They called it something different.
They just called it justice.
Yeah, you look up the definition in terms of how the writers of the Bible define justice, and it will look shockingly like how the most liberal activist calls social justice. And so then you got to think to yourself, there's something together about that.
Well, and if you look at the life of Jesus, I'm gonna make a lot of people mad. Jesus was a liberal feminist. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I know that must hurt, but it's true. The parables Jesus told, who he told off, the things that he said, the things that he did were social justice. There are so many. I'm having trouble like picking out examples of when Jesus was kind of a liberal and pretty social justicey. That was his thing. It just was. If you look at the New Testament, the modern version of social justice is everywhere. And that is why my struggle with people being against social justice is just, it boggles my mind, because the people who are the most against social justice are the ones who use their Bible as a weapon and not in the way they're supposed to. Um, there's a 90s evangelical reference for you. But but it's not like you have to read between the lines in those stories of Jesus, because Jesus' intent was justice. Jesus' intent was fairness. Jesus' intent was mercy and grace and forgiveness and prosperity and equity. You know, every time you hear a sermon about loving your neighbor, they say Jesus hung out with, at the time, prostitutes and tax collectors and murderers and whatever. So they use that example for loving your neighbor, but they don't use that example for justice. When, maybe with the exception of the murderer, depending on how you feel about that, that's a pretty social justicey type of thing, is to, want to help the poor, the disenfranchised, want to help the oppressed, want to give money to the poor, want to give your time and effort to the needy. Like, that is social justice at its core.
In the book of Matthew, Jesus tells a story about literally who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. And we've covered the topic of heaven and hell. And so you can take that to mean the way you want that to mean. But Jesus literally said, like, the people who are going into paradise are those who clothed the naked, fed the hungry, gave drink to the thirsty, visited the prisoners in prison. What you do to the least of these, you do to me. And then he said, and those who go to hell are those who didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the most direct times Jesus says, when you are doing good, when you are being good, and when you are being bad, is tied to helping lift up those who are being disenfranchised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you look into the New Testament, the only time Jesus gets angry is at the mighty and the powerful who are abusing their power.
Mm-hmm.
Pharisees and in the temple with the vendors at their tables, Roman rulers. And when Jesus met the least of these, the lowest of the low, people who everyone expected him to cast off or write off or ignore or send away, sex workers, adulterers, children, and that might seem like a weird comparison, but children had no value back then, so they were the lowest of the low. People were like, Jesus, that person sucks. Like, don't talk to them. And Jesus is like, haha, nah, I'm going to only talk to them. It's clear that Jesus had a system and agenda. Let's get real political. He had an agenda to help those who were seen as the lowest of the low and create a paradigm where they were on equal footing with everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And in that same agenda was knocking on their ass the powerful and the mighty and those who thought they were the best of the best for no other reason than they won the lottery of how they were born. I think that the thing that I want to get across more than anything in terms of Black Lives Matter, in terms of socialism, and in terms of social justice is while I personally like these three things, as a human being, I am for these three things. The caveat is that I see these three things as human endeavors,
Mm-hmm.
and that means they're not perfect. And because of that, it makes people who want to be against them have a lot of ammo to use for why they are against them. Because social justice warriors have done a lot of damage. Socialism, whether actual socialism or what the world, and when I say the world, the United States, it's called socialism, has done a lot of damage. Black Lives Matter, the organization, has potentially, allegedly, maybe done damage, but they're all human. So, like, they're not going to be perfect. But that doesn't mean they're not worth supporting or believing in. And the flip side of that is that doesn't mean that you can't be religious or spiritual or Christian and believe these things. I think I've said in a previous video, there's no belief system that hasn't been incorporated into Christianity. And I don't think there is many belief systems that will discount you from Christianity. You can't lose your Christian card by following a specific party.
There's not a checklist for being any
Yeah,
religious type person.
this might not sound like the best thing to say, but if you take Christianity at face value, it is not built on any sort of action. It is simply, do you believe in Jesus Christ? The Bible says as much. Literally, do you believe in Jesus? And so that means that you can be as good or as bad, whatever those words mean to you, you can be as good or as bad as you want, and you can still be a Christian. So there are horrible human beings who believe horrible things, but they still believe in Jesus. And there are human beings who believe great, good things, and they still believe in Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, before Jonestown, Jim Jones was a Christian.
Yeah.
He went to church. He believed in God. He read his Bible. And then he murdered 900 people on an island because he brainwashed them into thinking that he was Jesus, thinking that he was the best thing to ever happen to them. And he called himself a Christian. And I think every person would agree that Jim Jones was a very bad person. And he called himself a Christian. And there are some wonderful, amazing activists who are doing genuine, incredible things, and they call themselves atheists. You can't, no matter what someone calls themselves, you can't assume that they're a good or bad person because there's good or bad people in every belief type.
Yeah, I was going to say, reverse that. There have been atheists who have murdered tons of people, and there have been Christians who are genuine and beautiful and hardworking activists trying to make this world a better place. Your faith, your spirituality, your ideology, I don't think has any claim to if you're a good or bad person.
All that to say, yes, obviously you can be a Christian and support Black Lives Matter and socialism and social justice. Obviously, it's not a requirement, but it's not a requirement to think those things or believe in those things or be passionate about those things.
All right, well, I think that's what we got for you. We do this as often as we can. We got a lot of questions we're going through, and there's a lot more. You can always be adding them wherever you want to reach out to us. It'll go on the list, and we will work on it, and we will answer it. So thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Grace and peace. Cheers.